everyone. Welcome to Thursday Night Satsang with Padma and Hriman and Ananda Farm. And we will start by singing Life is a Dream.
Life is a dream, time like a stream, carries our burdens away. Never despair, joys everywhere, love can befriend you today. Free from all care, like birds on the air, soar above griefs and worries, seek joy and be gay. Often on earth things of great worth, worldly ambitions defy. Sometimes a friend helps us ascend up from life's cares to the sky. Love is a star, though shining afar, it can guide us and help us toward light to draw nigh. Love is a star, though shining afar, it can guide us and help us toward light to draw nigh.
Thank you, that was beautiful.
Friends, if you would like to pose a question for Padma and Hriman or add a comment, if you're watching on Facebook, simply write it in the comment section. And if you're watching from the website, you can go to the Ananda, Seattle, and Bothell Facebook page to do so.
Go away. That one right behind me there.
Sorry, just adjusting the windows. It's January in Julyuary in the Pacific Northwest.
Okay, well, let's start with a prayer. Heavenly Father,
Heavenly Father,
Divine Mother,
Divine Mother,
Friend, Beloved God,
Friend, Beloved God,
Jesus Christ,
Jesus Christ,
Babaji Krishna,
Babaji Krishna,
Lahiri Mahashai,
Lahiri Mahashai,
Swami Sri Yukteswar,
Swami Sri Yukteswar,
Beloved Master,
Beloved Master,
Paramahansa Yogananda Ji,
Paramahansa Yogananda,
and saints of all ages,
and saints of all ages,
and our friend and guide, Swami Kriyananda.
and our friend and guide, Swami Kriyananda.
We open our hearts to Thee,
We open our hearts to Thee,
that we might see
that we might see
with the eyes of wisdom
with the eyes of wisdom
the great drama of life,
the great drama of life,
with its joys and sorrows.
with its joys and sorrows.
We know that You are playing all the roles.
We know that You are playing all the roles.
Let us play ours
Let us play ours
as Your instruments,
as Your instruments,
as Your divine children.
as Your divine children.
Om. Peace. Amen. Well, we have a full house here tonight in the Hermitage Theater. We welcome and thank you all for being here, and those of you who are out there as well. So Padma, what's in store for us this evening?
Oh, questions.
That was a question.
They are all just sitting on the edge of their seats, ready to ask.
Really? Okay.
or comment.
Ask-
Haley, I can tell you have one.
I wondered if you guys wanted to update us about the living here and living at the community and what's happening.
Ah, yes, indeed. We will move into apartment number 32, the little house at Ananda Community in Linwood. Furniture, I should say, will move in on Monday, and successively over the days next week to follow, we'll reestablish our part-time residence there. And we're vaguely thinking, subject to change every 24 hours, to be there Wednesday night through Saturday night, and here Saturday night through Tuesday night. Perhaps that schedule will establish itself more in September, but because August still has a lot of other things happening. But approximately 50-50 is our goal. We'll see what Divine Mother has in store for us.
Okay, well, the days are bound to change a little bit, but it's anyway 50-50, so that's good. Yeah, thanks for asking. It'll be very interesting to have two households when we're trying to downsize with time and trying to keep things simple, so it'll add a little complexity, let's put it
So
that way.
Thursdays might be happening in Linwood.
Yes.
Yeah, the study groups, you mean? Or?
No, she means Thursdays.
Oh,
but-
yes.
But
We
we're,
won't be coming if it's in Linwood.
no, in fact, we haven't really talked about announcing it yet. It's not final, but we're thinking to take a break for August so that it will give us a chance to move, and there's vacations and all kinds of things going on for people. And then reassess in September, because in fact we're going to be proposing, we meant to talk about it this morning in our meeting with the ministers, but we're going to be proposing changing a lot of things around in order to accommodate this half week stuff. So stay tuned. Yeah, change is good, right?
More than good, it's inevitable,
Yeah.
whether you like it or not.
We've had kind of a monopoly on you here for the last many weeks.
Well, it's been our joy, I can assure you that.
I
So,
thought you were going to say you had a monopoly on change.
Well, 2020 certainly does.
Yeah, 2020 certainly
2020 will not have 2020 vision. If anything, it'll be the cloudiest year in quite a few years in history. You know, people will remember this year the way people remember where they were when John F. Kennedy was shot, or in more modern times what they were doing on 9/11, and it'll be, although not a day, it's a whole year. Nonetheless, it surely has to be a turning point in history. Hard to know what it all mean, of course. Time will tell, and history will decide. But I can't help, and I think a lot of people, like myself, think that this is a marker in history. So, you know, it's an interesting time. My son's wife gave a little thing today in a communication. She's been participating in the protests in Portland, and those of you who follow that kind of news know that it's well, it's not quite a tragedy, but it certainly is one of those events that kind of symbolize the underlying change that's probably always been there, but the underlying change that's evolving in terms of the polarization of our society, the sending of federal troops and all the stuff that's in the news that I don't really want to get into myself. But it does, I think it'll also be a marker of its own kind in our national history as the breakdown of, symbolizing the breakdown of trust. Not that it wasn't there to begin with. I came of age in the 60s and the Nixon leaving office, and so in my life and in in my generation, skepticism about the trustworthiness of government is sort of a given. It's practically an orientation, so it's not surprising to people like myself. But I think for this generation, for this time in history, it's a marker for just how maybe corrupt, how lacking in trust our institutions have become. And you know, it's not going to change anytime soon. It's not really a question of politics, it's a question of consciousness. And so it too forms, what's happening in Portland forms for me at least a marker, a historical marker in a peek at the road ahead. I've been saying for a year or two, political instability, social instability rather, not political, social instability is going to increase. It won't be limited to minorities or specific issues. I think we're going to see increasingly over many years to come the destabilization of urban life, city life, a movement of people from the cities bit by bit, maybe a trickle at first, but something, a sort of a second wave. We've had a wave towards the suburbs since about the 1920s when suburbs started to be built, and then a huge flow in World War II when some of us went boom. We're bang and boom, so to speak, we were born. But I think this is going to be yet another evolution of that migration away from a different lifestyle and so on. So it's sort of sad to see it, but I don't know, it's hardly a surprise. Nobody could possibly say it's a surprise. It's been going on for a long, long time, but it'll be a marker, I think.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's saying it's a surprise, but I did find it very sad when I heard her sort of first-hand account of what she experienced. It's heartbreaking that this is what is coming out right now, but I guess it's what's needed, and you know, you've got to sort of clean the wounds, and it's part of that process, but it's heartbreaking to see sort of the bully consciousness of our society right now. Anyway, that's not what we're here to talk about tonight.
We are the revolution.
We are here to talk about where spirit is going at a time like this. Spirit is going where? Inside. Hopefully, yeah.
So,
Sita, do you have any people
anybody out
writing anything in?
I'm having a little bit of a challenge getting connected just right now, but nothing I can see yet.
I have another question. We had a number of people visit the farm this week, and just overwhelmingly people are coming out and they're really inspired by what we're doing in terms of living together and just, you know, working on the land, but I think especially trying to live a sustainable lifestyle all together. And people, a number of people kind of commented that it's something they would like to do, or it's something they've always wanted to do, but they don't really know how to get started or what they can do from where they're at. So what would you
Well, what was your response?
Yeah, you're living it.
Hey
But-
now.
How did you answer that question?
She said she'd ask Padma and Hriman when
Yeah,
she
I
saw
said I'll
them.
get back to you. Well, one young woman in particular, she was interested in sustainability and felt like there were only certain things that she could do living in an apartment, and that, you know, it would kind of never be enough. And I told her that it was really the consciousness that she had, and what, you know, doing what she can with where she is, and having the right, you know, attitude about, you know, that's how she wants to live, and she's making the choices she can to live that way.
Yeah, and also then, you know, the network of people that you hang out with, whether nowadays virtually or in person, but being, like in her case or anyone's case, being part of something bigger than ourselves is at least as important as trying to live sustainably in a earth-centric way, because that expands our hearts, it expands our self-involvement. Because after all, I've met my share of dogmatists who are into sustainability. They make a religion out of recycling or whatever it might be. And that's just a repeat of an old paradigm of separation. So, the only thing I'd add would be to find people that like mine, because maybe she can grow a few tomatoes on her balcony, but then her friend could grow the zucchini on her balcony, and you could trade them. I'm being facetious, but in other words, when we network with people, we create a force, as we all know, greater than the sum of the parts.
In Seattle, as you're aware, we had the Sangha, the Seattle, Washington Sangha, who chose to invest in this way, and by pooling our funds, we were able to purchase the farm with, the house on it and all of that. But as you also know, all of you, Yogananda spoke earnestly many, many decades ago in the last century about people pooling their funds and buying some acreage and coming together to farm and to work the soil and such. And so it's, you have to, in order to do that, people have to be willing to get out of their comfort zone, and they have to be willing to network together and go out sort of shaking the bushes and seeing if they can find friends who want to do it with them. And maybe it's not all or nothing. Maybe they don't get to move there right away. In Holland, where I'm from originally, there's a very limited amount of land for sale available, period. And through many, many centuries of really good planning, land use planning, they have certain areas where they have cities and the buildings go up, and then they have an enormous amount of land in farmland, in both agricultural and animals, and also forests. And so it's incredible planning. And what you'll find is all along the railroad tracks are these little postage stamp little plots that people go out from their apartment, their high rise, and they go out there and they tend their gardens. And they have these little tiny, tiny miniature little, almost dollhouse looking little sheds with their tools in them. They can lock up, and then they're working that soil and doing their gardens. So there's creative ways to do this kind of thing. It doesn't have to be a 10-acre farm on Camano Island, or now it's grown to 20, 25 acres when you put it all together, and the number of houses we have there. But you can start with what you can and with friends, and maybe they can pool their funds and buy a 1/4 acre somewhere, and outside of a city where they can go and grow things. That's a beginning. And they can tent out there, and they can camp, and just have fun with it, and you move in that direction, you lean in that direction, and things can start to happen.
We also had, just this week, I mean, and in general, we've seen this summer, a lot of families coming together. Like there's one family on the island that, it's the parents and their adult children with their children have come from the East Coast to spend the summer here, and another family came out and there's like 7 of them all in this household, all, you know, adults or teenagers together, and something that came up from one of them, and I wondered, it's kind of a nice thing to address as people maybe do start living more together and more communally, is how to deal with conflict, because that naturally happens.
Well, the Ananda culture and experience has always, in the context of that statement or question or topic, asserted the importance of having an inner spiritual life as the basis for the relationships of the people sharing whatever it is, a house or the land and so forth. Without that inner calmness and that sense of, I'm okay, you might be okay. That's the name of a book back in the 60s, I'm okay, you're okay. The joke back then was, I'm okay, you're not. But, you know, without that inner basis, our experience, our affirmation, our belief, whatever you want to call it, is that that's essential for people to get along. Because, you know, in our own form, and meaning also our personality, we simply don't get along. I mean, we just have different ideas. I mean, if marriage is worth anything, it shows people that we're different. You know, meaning two people who are not of the same family living in close quarters, you find that no matter how connected you are on a heart basis and ideals, on the day-to-day little stuff, you're really different. So it takes something deeper to do that. But it's interesting that you bring that example, because in our travels in India, and some of you here too, we see that lifestyle, and I suppose it's true of China, I've never been to China, where extended families do typically live together. I remember a few years ago when I noticed that in the Seattle area, it wasn't just here, it just happens to be where I live, but I noticed that in the real estate industry, the homes were getting, it was shocking to me growing up in the post-war years where everybody wanted land, you know, with their suburban home, and that was really a prized possession in the West of America, land, you know. But what I saw, and it was the Asian influence I realized after a while, is that people got big houses on a postage stamp of land they were comfortable with and accustomed to sharing a home in an extended family way, whereas in American, at least post-war culture, that was, you know, nobody wanted that. The last thing you wanted to live with your parents, for heaven's sake. So I realized, in having traveled a bit myself, that was a peculiarly American and I'll call it post-war American consciousness, is to move out to the suburbs with a single family house with as much land as you could afford and, you know, get away from it. That was a bubble, a tiny bubble in human history. And so I think we are already seeing, and I've seen articles to that effect with some of the younger generation, people willingly, happily living together with or without their blood family or whatever. And this is going to be the paradigm, whether you see it not inspired, but the necessity of some economic pressure, fine, that whatever it takes. But I think it's more than that. I think in terms of consciousness, more and more people are going to live like that. The homes we see in India, 3-story
Compounds.
compound, would be almost a mansion here if it were on property, but 3-story compounds with different kitchens and different things like that. It is interesting to see that, because I think it's the model for the future. Now, Padma and I lived with 2 other families. We consciously built, with the help of a wonderful architect, we built a home called Villa Joya at Ananda Village. I don't remember what year, I don't know, back in the late something or others. And we had 3 children between us and 6 adults, I guess, 3 children, 9 of us, and so forth. It was an experiment. We were trying to do it for the sake of maybe an example to the rest of the community, because the Ananda village community was born out of the consciousness that I just described. I wanted my shack, my little house, to be unseen. I don't want to have to see anybody. I'm going to live totally by myself or with my husband or wife or whatever. And it was really born of the culture that we were raised in. And it wasn't necessarily what was trying to happen. The forest fire came and burned out all the brush and the trees, and people had to say, "What? I can see your little shack over there? Oh my God." You know, it was just so white privileged, as the modern term is now today. It was just so childish, actually. But so things are changing, and it really is what needs to happen. And what you all are doing is a wonderful inspiration for people, and it's clearly the trend that will take place during your lifetimes.
Even if they don't have an overt spiritual basis, for conflict resolution there has to be some level of love. It can't just be an economic priority. There, you know, it's like brothers and sisters. You may not like each other, but you keep forgiving each other, and you keep, you know, sort of working it out over time, and that sense has to be there. And if it's spiritually based, it comes more easily. But even if it's not, love has to be there, and love, of course, is always spiritually based, but people may not have an overt spiritual path or a meditative practice. But they have to be willing to give and take. They have to be willing to not always have their way. And granted, there are many characters. In fact, most everybody, to some degree, likes to have their way. But you learn to live with those realities when you're living under one roof. And so you work it out. And like Hriman likes to tell the story of being raised in a family with 5 children, 4 boys and a girl, that when he or his brothers would he and his brothers would get into arguments or fights, his father would bring them into the basement, hand them boxing gloves and say, "Duke it out," you know. And just, they had to deal with it and work it out. And that is what we have to do. And sometimes it takes that. But it's not always easy, and it's not always fun. But when you work through it, just like in a marriage, when you work through the trials and tribulations that come day to day, you come out the other end a little more mature and a little bit more calm and elevated. And it gives you the sustenance you need to, you know, keep trying and keep working on it. Do you have anything yet?
No, but I do know that your mom is watching, William, so you can say hi to Elaine.
You had that look in your face, and I thought it was a question, but hi, Elaine.
You know, the one downside of that whole impulse towards group living, shared living, is the thought that it's going to be cheaper. And I've seen time and time again, we used to have, now Bar, did you ever go to San Francisco House? Were you part of it?
Yeah, wasn't part of
Oh, okay. We had this beautiful mansion in San Francisco, corner of Fillmore and Broadway, looking at the Golden Gate. It was wonderful.
23 bedrooms.
23 bedrooms, a designer house. But even in the little ashram that we ran in Nevada City after the fire, before houses were built, I remember we had, do you remember that fellow who lived with us? You
I know
if-
exactly who he's talking about.
You know, if people come in and they never clean up after themselves, and they don't pay their rent, or they're slovenly, or, you know, they don't help, and they don't share meals or cooking or cleaning, or, you know, it's never cheaper. And one of the first things I saw at Ananda Village, because my own sort of what I did there had to do with finances, was that, and it's still true today, it's actually very expensive, because it takes, and I don't want to get stuck on money things. What I'm really talking about is energy and commitment. And so, you know, that's where the ideals can help, you know, unite people in that, because they're not going to have the love for one another unless they know have already known each other and have some kind of relationship. So when you think on a more global scale and you replicate the model, if people come together just because they're going to save money, which is one reason a lot of people do share things, right? It's not going to be all that satisfying an experience. And it's probably not going to be necessarily even cheaper, especially if you build from scratch an ashram or something like that. So there has to be more to it than convenience or expense. There has to be a driving positive motivation that inspires you to put out more energy to overcome the natural hurdles to being separate and having different ideas and habits and so forth.
You know, it's also what we learned in that house in San Francisco. We had people sharing rooms, so there were 46 people living in that house, that ashram. Yeah, right. But what we learned is that the larger the number of people living together, in many ways, the easier it is. Because if you live in a house with just 8 people living together in a house, it's those same people having coffee every morning, staring at each other across the table, and, you know, right? Am I hitting on something here?
I still like to have hockey.
But if you have 46 people living together, you're going to be with different people at different times. We went once on a vacation with Swami Kriyananda, and there were 14 of us. And that was a good number, because what happened was we had several places with 4 people staying in each place, all in the same complex on this vacation. It was in Hawaii. And what happened was there was always somebody else who enjoyed doing what you enjoyed doing. So, you know, I like to body surf, so there was the carload that would go body surfing, and there was the other carload that would go to the bay and snorkel, and then there was the other carload that would not go out in the car and just nap and sleep and read books. And in other words, you could find somebody that you shared an enjoyment with for vacation and do that. And a similar dynamic happens in shared housing, which is the larger the number of people, actually the easier it gets, the more diffused the energy is. So you're not bumping into that same person that you struggle with all the time. Yes?
I have a question, like when people come to the farm or to the temple, and it's just it's like, wow, like I want that too. What would you say to, you know, walking into that and not seeing or being part of the energy and the tapasya and hard work that went into, not saying I want that, but
what can I give, not what can I receive. Do you see a question in there?
You mean to the person?
Well, just in general, it's just like, it's like one thing to come in to feel and say, I want that, but there's also that element of what can I give to it as well.
It's okay to have an initial romantic attraction to it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Swami would paint very romantic pictures to people, in this sense of how ideal it is and how it's okay to want that ideal, knowing full and well that, ultimately we have to face ourselves, and if you're a schmuck, you're going to be a schmuck no matter how many people you're with. But the point is that that's okay in the beginning. Yeah. You don't have to spell it all out. Oh, but there's a downside.
No, I don't
Yeah.
mean that, but just.
Or even that they have to give. It'll become obvious.
Yeah, but I also think that maybe you're hinting at, or at least for me, hints at the fact that, as I've often said in training people, that when you first come to something, maybe it's a relationship, but in this case we're talking about the spiritual path and here at Ananda, you just soak it up like a sponge, right? And it is kind of a romantic period, if you want to use that image. But there does come a time when if it doesn't shift into, well, how can I help? Or, you begin to notice things after a while, and then maybe it's putting the chairs away, but unless there's a shift of energy from receiving to giving back and closing the circle, so to speak,
Yeah.
then what we've observed, I'm sure some of you have also, that a person will simply drift away. And so like when some of you are experienced teachers, you'll see how many times did I see a student just on fire and enthusiasm, but unless they could make the shift, or I was wise enough maybe to help them make the shift towards giving back, the fire would sputter out. I never see them again, And I don't want to say challenge people, because that doesn't make sense either, but open up a door, like, could you help me? Dale Carnegie was famous, and Yogananda enjoyed quoting him, as did Kriyananda, for saying, if you want to make a friend, ask a favor. Now, I'll tell you, I found that hard to swallow in my early days, because
Irishmen
the
don't
last
ask
thing
favors.
I ever want to do is ask a favor, for heaven's sake. You just don't do that. You may have to die with a debt. And we know you're coming back, and you got to pay that debt off. So that was I didn't get that. I didn't believe it. But I've seen that it's true. I've had to force myself to sort of experiment with it. And that sounds manipulative, and that's partly why one hesitates. But it really, people are good people, basically. And we all want to contribute. We all want to be whatever. And so that's the shift that has to happen. But here's how we can help people. We can help people by looking for opportunities that would allow them to help. And that doesn't mean stick out your hand and ask for a donation. Okay, fine, but more in a personal way, and just little things. It also makes us vulnerable, maybe. I don't know if that's true, but to some extent to need help, And I know in working with our staff, having gone through what I've had to go through, that I sometimes have to remind our staff, it's great to be competent, it's great to be able to do stuff, but it's okay to ask for help. We're here to, what it means to be on staff in a church or a ministry or a yoga center type context is to look for and for all of you too, is to not just look for ways to see what I've done, or, here's this wonderful, herbal remedy or produce, but to look for ways for people to give back. that's not an easy lesson, you know, because you like what you're doing and so forth. But look for ways for people can help.
No, that's true, and that's something I've learned serving is that if you're really good at getting stuff done and juggling a lot of things and you don't ask for help or you say no thank you, you're really robbing somebody else of the opportunity to serve and to volunteer and, like you said, complete that circle. It's kind of like the mom who's just, it's easier just to do it myself than to have to, you know, but there's wisdom in doing so.
That's been my mantra most of my life. Never mind, I'll do it myself.
That's why I'm enjoying hearing you talking about
Yeah,
this.
I'm sure you're enjoying it. I can talk a good talk. Harder to do.
Yeah. Okay. What else?
Good one.
Good stuff.
Yeah, good stuff.
Are we? Oh,
It's 8:15.
yeah. Do you have another song at the end tonight? No. Okay.
We
All
could
right.
sing "Cherish."
We could.
Yeah, we could.
On the spur of the moment.
Oh, that's an easy song.
He's asking us to serve, to complete
the-
the
that's the
service.
opportunity.
I have to say, it's really nice when you all are here, and even if you're not all asking questions, your energetics are here, and you can feel it, appreciate it. We have one more in July, and then we're just going to take a break for a month and refresh ourselves, right? Yeah.
But I like what Haley brought up because it's so meaningful to me. Because Swami said it year after year after year. He would say things like that. What we're doing, someday people will look back and see that it was one of the single most important thing happening below the headlines in the newspapers. And that paradigm of living together, you know, sustainably, whatever that might mean. There's different ways that can be done. It doesn't have to be food, but Yogananda made a special emphasis on food, and it makes just logical sense, given some of the things that we may be facing and some of the course corrections in consciousness that are needed today, like in the whole field of agriculture itself, which is pretty basic, you know, we got to eat. But nonetheless, that whole paradigm is really central to the example that we have to give to people, and for them to kind of figure out on their own how to do it, not necessarily our way, but that really strikes to the heart of our outer form of life and its meaning. Because one of the things, I don't want to say I struggle with as if it's, you know, I'm opening my soul or something, but you know, I think all of us would like to see the way we live and so forth be shared. And yet, you know, we don't make any headlines. You know, it wouldn't seem to be important to the culture yet we have a lot to offer. So when people out there who just meet us appreciate the relevance and feel inspired to do it, that's, you know, I find that very inspiring, because that's what we can offer. That's what we're offering to people.
And what people are feeling, what?
Continue, there's a question.
I just wanted to
Sure.
say for a moment, what people are feeling when they come out, let's say for example, to the farm, isn't only the nature and the beauty of the farm, or even the, you know, the fact that you have an ashram, that you are living with one another. They pick up on the vibration. But what I'm trying to say is that Ananda Village, it's been that way too. If people move there with a romantic image of what it means to live out in nature, or to live out of the city, and they don't have the spiritual component that is their real motivator, it doesn't feel the same way when they actually try to do it. You know, they'll bump into themselves, and they won't have those ideals that are spurring them on. And so it ends up just not being what they think it's going to be. So if we're doing that for what we think to be comfort or for the sake of our children to have a nice environment to grow up in or something, it will only take them so far. And at some point they face themselves again. And so there does need to be this extra ingredient, call it spirituality, call it love, call it kindness, this genuineness needs to be there, or else it's just another lifestyle. Yeah. Yes.
Okay, this is from Martha Norwalk.
I know her.
Can you turn the camera and show us who is there, please? We could feel the energy that way that Padma is talking about, and it would be so wonderful to see all of your beautiful faces and smiles! Exclamation point.
They're all wearing masks. You won't recognize them.
Yeah. How about a roll call, Martha? I think that's the best we can do.
We're gonna
Start.
sing, right?
Oh yeah,
We can
we'll
sing.
say.
Oh, they're
We're
going to
gonna
sing in a minute. You'll see them all. It will be hard for the camera to pivot right now. But thank you for asking. It was a very serious question.
Oh, very, very serious. Okay.
Okay, well, let's do our meditation first and then a song to close.
okay.
Somebody want to chant?
Yes.
Beyond? Oh, on there, can you? Very nice.
Aw.
Prayer.
just have a few minutes, but let's center ourselves, going in behind closed eyes, lifting our gaze upward and our heart open. Let's be instruments of peace, sending out with each heartbeat a wave of peace into the world. For restless hearts, for those torn with fear, torn even with hatred, send out waves of Om, waves of peace, out into the world, searching for souls who are themselves searching for inner peace, for the divine presence. Let us be still then. Send out those waves, waves of peace.
Now let's take a moment and offer the special prayer affirmation that we're doing at Ananda all around the world. Let's just offer it once through in a speaking voice, responsively. God's light is within me and around me.
God's light is within me and around me.
With the sword of faith in my hand.
With the sword of faith in my hand.
With the love of God in my heart.
With the love of God in my heart.
I am a warrior of light.
I am a warrior of light.
I join my brothers and sisters everywhere.
I join my brothers and sisters everywhere.
To overcome fear with faith.
To overcome fear with faith.
Hatred with love.
Hatred with love.
And disease with health.
And disease with health.
We all are warriors of light.
We all are warriors of light.
We fill the world with God's light.
We fill the world with God's light.
Om
Om.
Shanti. Amen. Now we'd like to ask all the audience, the singing audience, to come up.
Is there anywhere on earth?
Cherish these. Do you want to be me back?
Men first time through, women second time through, and then whoever wants to sing harmony, I'll take it.
My shirt don't work.
Is there anywhere on earth perfect freedom, sorrow's dearth, selfless friendship, blameless mirth? Cherish these, naught else has worth.
Is there anywhere on earth perfect freedom, sorrow's dearth,
Hriman, do you want to make any announcements about?
Yes, we have a satsang on Sunday at 12 noon after Sunday service at the Blue Lotus Temple, and a wonderful 1 p.m. start time for a fair, what would you call it? A farm stand fair, sale of used yoga props and mats fair,
Crystals.
crystal fair, what else?
Friendship fair.
Friendship fair, that's what it is. So 9 o'clock meditation online or in person, 10 o'clock service, ditto, and 12 noon satsang in the garden outside the temple, and a 1 p.m. friendship fair. Okay, see you there.
See you there.
At the fair.
She's